All right. Hello, guys. We're BraInsight here for our sixth and final episode of the podcast. So just for those who don't remember, I'm Jose Rafael Libunao. That's Theodore James B. Angeles and Ross Christoph Yalung.
Hello.
For our final episode, we're gonna be discussing the effects of overconsumption of digital media, especially social media. For this episode, we have a guest here today. He is a data scientist working for Facebook and is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania. Could we please welcome Kuya David?
Um,
All
Ayun.
right.
So, uh, for the people watching at home, what exactly does a data scientist do?
all right. Really good question. So, we all know that data is one of the most powerful resources that we have in this age of digital media, in this age of 21st century. So, as a data scientist, we answer the fundamental question of, oh, what does data tell us about what people are doing? What does data tell us about what decision we should be making? So, compared to before, where a lot of businesses function on a scale of more intuition, simple hypothesis, what their assumption is about human behavior, as a data scientist, we try to verify these things through numbers. For example, we might have a hypothesis that people like to watch videos these days. There's an easy way to prove that if you have the numbers backing it. For example, comparing what people are doing in their free time, is it watching videos or doing something else. So this kind of idea of being hypothesis driven and using numbers to verify it is the foundation and the bedrock of what data science is supposed to do. And to get a bit deeper, what data science do in a specific company could vary based on the business needs of companies. But overwhelmingly, it's about using data to make the right decisions and making the best decision for a certain stakeholder or a certain shareholder you have. So that's kind of a general overview of data scientist. It can also be brought up into several different substream. For example, you may be a more data scientist that answers behavioral question, which we call you a product data scientist. You may be a data scientist who does more coding, programs algorithm, then we call you more of a machine learning engineer. That can also be a substrand of data scientist. So it takes many different forms. But the general idea is harnessing the power of data to make your product better and to make the business better.
Oh,
So
hey, thank you.
yes. So you are a data scientist, right? But the next question is, why did you choose to work for Facebook as a data scientist?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. Very fundamentally, ideally, as a data scientist, you work in a place where you have a lot of access to different kind of data. Ideally, you work in a place where you can use this data to really tangibly affect the life of people, right? As a data scientist, that's me personally. I want to work in a place that I will not only grow my technical abilities, but also be able to actually impact people on the ground. We know the reach of Facebook as a social media company. We know that many people uses it. So if you could use data to make people have a better experience on Facebook, to have a better time using social media to connect with your friends, for example, that's huge impact that you as an individual could possibly be making. So working as a data scientist for Facebook in my specific case is because I do want to use my abilities and the skills I have through Facebook as a medium to make impact on other people's lives. But in addition to that, Facebook is a top tier tech company. In here, you meet a lot of other very brilliant data scientists, other very brilliant software engineers, and through them you can learn even more and develop your skills better too. So it's both for like personal impact, but also personal growth that I chose to work as data scientist for Facebook.
Okay,
That's
okay,
very
okay.
insightful. Okay, so Kuya David, I have a question for you. My question is, what portion of the population do you think is the most inclined towards social media?
Yeah, this is also a very interesting question, right? Personally, my view of social media is that it's not necessarily something that standalone provides a lot of value. The reason why social media is very valuable to people is mainly for, I guess, two different reasons. First, it onboards your social graph to a digital setting. Social media, people want to use it because they want to fundamentally talk to their friends. They want to fundamentally connect with other people. They want to belong to a social group in a social setting, even when they're not physically with someone else. For example, I would maybe want to talk to my friends when I get home after school, through which I use social media to connect with my friends. I want to, for example, talk to my friends who are abroad, may not be with me physically. I use social media to connect with them. I think that's fundamentally why social media is something people want to use. Of course, now in this day and age, this trend is pivoting a little bit. People now also use social media for entertainment, to get information. That's also for personal craving, right? For example, I am very interested in sports. A lot of my social media will be filled with sports news. And that's fundamentally why I would want to use social media, because I like watching these things, and that's where I get a lot of information from. To that end, that's fundamentally to me, this means that everyone in the population are probably inclined to use social media because everyone has these needs. They want to get entertainment. They want to connect with people. Maybe people who are more extroverted, who have more diversity of interest, would be more inclined in that specific case. But that said, inclination is one thing. Whether or not they want to use social media is one thing. Knowing how to use it is a different thing. This demographic naturally pivots to younger generation. People may be prone to use social media because they're more tech savvy. They know how to use the tools. Whereas older generation are less exposed to technology and therefore they have a barrier to entry to use social media. So I think while everyone's inclined to use something like this, not everyone has access to it. Not everyone could use it in the easiest way as possible. So that can skew the result of who is using social media these days. That's kind of like a two-pronged answer to the question. Feel free to ask any clarifying question there, if you have any.
No, I think that was really in depth. Thank you for that. So I have another question here. I was trying to think of a way to segue into it, but I couldn't really think of a really good transition. But since social media has such a wide range of influence, and so many people are using it, some people don't really understand how to properly manage their time with it. What do you think makes social media so addictive? So, what do you think makes social media so addictive to those types of people?
Yeah, I do agree. I think in general, social media is becoming an indispensable part of our lives. Everyone uses it, and people want to spend a lot of time on it. The first question I do want to answer is specifically along the line of this, is that I personally still do think social media standalone is not what makes it necessarily addictive to begin with. Prior to social media, people still want to connect with other people. People still want to get information. Their addiction turns to TV. Their addiction turns to cell phone. Social media became an aggregator of these things. It now makes people spend more time on social media because it's a substitute for cell phone. It's a substitute for faxing. It's a substitute for TV. So a lot of these time that you used to spread, that's diversified into 3 different sources, is now aggregated into one. So people spend a lot more time on it. So I think ultimately this is less about a social media by itself. I do think it's very speaks to the fundamental desire people have to connect, to get information. But that said, obviously, aside from that, social media does also try to give people the content that people want to see. So the better you are at tailoring and personalizing these recommendations, the more people are likely going to use social media. So that's the idea of also like that data is powerful, right? What you do on internet and what you do on your social media is use the feedback loop to give you the content that you would want to see the most. So the more tailored it is, the more likely people are going to use it, and the more they may be prone to being so-called addicted. That said, social media a lot of companies these days are also very cognizant of that fact. And we try to tailor things such that we can make people less addicted to social media. We want to show them content that's not just driving them to keep using it, but to use it in a healthy way that makes sure they come back and use it in the future and not be deterred by social media because it's so addicting, it disrupts their personal life. That's kind of like the general view of, I do think it is to some extent can be seen as addictive, but it's actually due to multiple different kind of reasons that exist.
So so we know that social media can be addictive and like the people like using it a lot. And for the last question, that leads to the last question: how does social media affect people in real life? Like since they use it so much, how does it affect maybe how they interact with other people, for example?
I do think this question can be best answered by you guys and by the audiences of this podcast as well, right? Ultimately, you have to ask the question: how does social media affect you as an individual? I think right now, while there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of heat on social media, I do think social media what social media is doing is not perfect. There are certain problems with it. For example, you might be stuck in the echo chamber, for example, because of being social media. I do think there's a lot of problems we have to be very cognizant of. But that said, I do think while simultaneously, while there's these kind of problems, there are also a lot of benefits that we're ignoring. For example, if you are going by a day without social media, you might find it a lot harder for you to talk to your friends. You find it a lot harder for you to connect with family members abroad. or friends abroad. You might find it a lot harder to get information that would have been available to you in the very, very beginning in your first sight. All these things, the conveniences that social media brings about, are things that people tend to ignore these days. But I do think these are also very important things. So I think there's pros and cons out there. I do think it brought a lot of convenience to people's life, brought a lot of entertainment to people's life, makes people have a good time when they're away from their loved one, for example. But at the same time, it does have its down draws, which is the idea of people may be more stuck within what content they're seeing online. They may be very immersed with that kind of content and choose to not spend time that may also be valuable. For example, spend time doing things that outdoors, for example. These are all things that I too. So I think it affects the multiple different dimensions. But we do have to see both sides.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. That concludes the interview. Thank you very much for all this information you have given us, because I am 100% sure we have learned a lot from this interview, such as like how social media affects us in real life, why people like using social media and whatnot. So thank you very much, Kuya David, for this wonderful interview. And I hope everyone in the audience learned something. Thank you.
No worries at all.
All right, guys. A round of applause for Kuya David. Okay, we already clapped though, so that doesn't. That doesn't work. But yeah, that was Kuya David. He's a data scientist that worked for Facebook. He was very kind to allow us to share some time with him and get some of his insights for our podcast. So now we're going to continue on with the rest of the podcast. Theo, could we get into the meat of it?
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the positive effects or positive like stuffs of social media. So I have 3 here. Build relationships, connect anytime, or communicate with people anytime, and education. And this okay, Ross. So this thing. So let's go to the first one. Build relationships. This one during the pandemic. Actually, the first 2, build relationships and connect anytime. This social media helped me a lot during the pandemic. I'm pretty sure it helped all of us. It helped us.
Yeah, I'm sure most of us can relate to that.
Yes, it helped us communicate with our friends.
Building relationships. Meron ka siguro first-hand experience na, Tia.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So like you can talk with your friends and stuff like that. I mean, the thing is, during COVID, obviously we didn't get to see each other face to face, so we needed to be able to communicate. We are social animals, as we have learned in the previous episode. So we definitely needed that. And this education thing, my third point. You can learn a lot of stuff on Facebook and other social media platforms, but some of the stuff that you learn may not be real, so to speak. And Rafi will be dealing with that later with the fake news segment.
Yeah. I'm gonna have
exactly,
like
right. We learn about the stuff that's ongoing, like the elections and whatnot, and random facts that you might see on social media. Ross, go. Talk about the negative.
Bilis naman. Pero I think there's a lot of things you can learn in social media. Like especially I think YouTube is considered social media. I think a lot of us got help. Got a lot of help in school from social media. Dun sa YouTube especially, yung organic chemistry.
Yes.
Khan Academy.
Khan Academy.
I like Professor Dave.
Professor Dave explains. Ayun, they are absolute godsends in like just chemistry and a lot of subjects that we learn.
The Amoeba Sisters, Rafi.
Ayun nga, it just helps to assist us in understanding our lessons, and that's something really good that social media helps us with.
But we have to watch out for some things. Okay, this is where I come in. Now,
Uh-huh.
we are focused on the positive side of social media, but of course, with everything, everything in general, there's a positive, there's a negative, there's a pro, there's a
Uh-huh.
con, there's an advantage, there must be a disadvantage.
Oh.
I would label this
There's the
as a
front side,
cautionary.
there's the front side, then there's the stinky, funky backside. No one likes to
but
talk
it's
about
but
it,
it's still
except
its
for
side.
us.
So, ano, uh, first, if personal experience, and I think all others can relate. People watching this, or if you know someone who can relate. My number one problem with social media now, it's exactly the fact that it's easily accessible and easy to use. That's a disadvantage, but it's also an advantage. The
Mm-hmm.
advantage is it's self-explanatory, but the disadvantage comes kapag it's hindi mo na makontrol sarili mo. It's addicting kasi. It's
Mhm.
very addicting. You can
Oh yeah, absolutely.
lose track of time and procrastinate. Personally, I will be open about that. I procrastinate from time to time because of social media, mainly YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. There's
Same.
so much going on kasi around the world, every day, all time, and you want to keep up siguro, and meron kang mga fina-follow online na that aren't really important sa buhay mo purely for entertainment.
Oh
It's
yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
pero it needs to be manageable. So,
Yun nga,
lahat
it's
tayo, kayo, di ba?
yeah, it's sort of like watching movies, pero in like a really, really tiny, uh, really tiny space
Like
that's
the
like more
clips.
easily digestible. Yeah, yung mga clips. So like movies, you'd have like, you know how movies are sort of more like events. Like you
Mhm.
watch it, you're like, wow, that was pretty good. I'm gonna go do something else after
Yeah.
watching the movie.
Yeah.
Pero yeah, like YouTube or other things, or like scrolling through social media, that sort of thing, it doesn't really end uh like a movie would or a TV show would.
Mm.
And a lot of them have like algorithms that keep you um that give you topics in which you're interested in, and you just go into like an endless cycle of scrolling and watching
Yeah.
videos and just keep doing that over and over again.
Yeah.
And
Pero
it's
yung addiction, sige. Patapos yung muna sa ano.
I did. That's all I had to say. That's all I had to say,
That's
Golaros.
all, that's all. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
So,
all. That's
back to the topic. Para sa akin ano lang, insight ko lang,
uh-huh.
the mother of yung mga problems sa social media is addiction. Mother
Mm-hmm.
siya kasi meron pa siyang children, okay? That's the bad part there. That's the worst part. May mga anak pa, may mga problems pa na nagsistem sa addiction, that is self-isolation. I mean, it should help to socialize.
Yeah.
Pero sometimes ina-isolate mo na yung sarili mo doon, from you don't know which is real, which shouldn't be real, and it's toxic kasi if you're you can't live life normally pag ano. To be more specific, let's say your life is sad. Let's say your life is sad. Imagine for a second your life is sad and you have no family, no partner, and you immerse yourself too much in social media. I know it's hard and it's a coping mechanism, pero you forget to really live. It's easy for me to say kasi di ko pa naman na-experience yan. Pero I'm just saying it out loud doon. That's isa pang problem doon. And
Okay, wait lang. Ross, naka-off yung camera mo, by the way.
It became so deep.
Your
Ako
life is
camera ko.
sad? Ay, sorry, di ako maka-focus dito sa sinabi mo. Pero, yeah, those are all
Life is
probably
sad.
really good points. Pero, life doesn't need to be sad, you know?
Life doesn't
Pero
need to be
speaking
sad.
of sad
Correct.
things, also speaking of mothers and children especially because of the like dawn of social media and the internet, like and especially during the time of the pandemic with social media and like easy access to like instant entertainment and information, it is very, very harmful to children and adolescents' social growth. And it often
isa pa yun,
stunts they're
actually.
able to interact with each other. Since, if you grow up in a digital environment, it makes it much harder to sort of like shift to the real world, the
Yes, that's
physical
right.
world,
Uh,
where you can talk to other
Yes,
people and you don't have like a constant source of, yung dopamine that's given to you by
yeah,
those
dopamine.
instant,
That's the
by that instant
yung
entertainment stuff.
instant gratification. Yung
Yun nga,
at
yun.
saka yung attention span, yung diminishing attention span, it's also harmful. Kasi nga, yun nga, it's unnatural. Actually, if you think about it, social media isn't really natural.
Mhm.
As biologically, we didn't evolve na may mga devices, electronic devices around us like this. It can be as simple as a light bulb. It's actually unnatural to have a light bulb in your home. Fun fact lang, alam nyo ba na may study na found out on 1957 na diminish yung hours of sleep ng mga Americans since the invention of the light bulb. Alam, lang.
Oh yeah, that makes
Just
sense.
a
That makes
nifty
sense.
fact para
Yeah,
just
kasi
to give
they
you
always
a
have light on.
broader perspective.
Yeah, that's actually a really good analogy. Like your lights and not sleeping is connected to social media and social interaction. So that's a really good thing to draw connection to. And I'm going to have like a really smooth transition to my part.
Let's go.
There you go.
So ito yung transition. So speaking of social media, a study conducted by the Ateneo School of Government found that a good 79% of the people they surveyed in their interview got their news or get their news from online sources. And
News,
of course, since
okay,
it's
we're on
online
news now.
sources, it's not regulated, it's not moderated well. So there's always the chance of fake news popping up in those sort of social media spaces. And according to the social weather stations, the SWS, in 2020, in a survey they conducted in 2021, a good 51% of Filipinos find it difficult to spot fake news, like out in the wild, out in the online or just in general, like TV, radios, just all that jazz.
All that jazz.
All that jazz. They find it hard to spot which is real, which is fake, which sources should be trusted. Pero kung wala kayong if you, Theo and Ross, if you're not going to like intervene in this part, I'm gonna move on to the next one.
Move on, Rafael.
Speaking of fake news, I'm gonna give you some knowledge from BraInsight about how to spot fake news online and how to avoid it and report it, and how to be more informed, be smarter with BraInsight. Okay. So first thing you got to do when you are looking through stuff online, when you're looking through your feed in Facebook or when you're browsing through Google, it is always important to check the sources of your information. You need to see if they're credible sources. For example, you might have the Rappler or the Manila Times or the Guardian. Those are relatively credible news sites, or if it's straight from government organizations, those are generally credible. But there are other sites that are just straight up propaganda or satire, which are confusing but really funny.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if you guys
So,
heard
so
of the
you should have the understanding to understand which is a
Yun nga,
joke
you need to
and which is not.
Yun nga, if you don't have a sense of humor, you're dead.
So I'm gonna die.
Pero if you're like if you're a funny guy, you'll be able to survive. You're good.
Just don't be too serious, guys.
Yeah, don't be too
That's
serious,
it.
but also
Don't take everything seriously.
Don't be like the people who
Don't be
actually
too funny.
speak. Yun nga, don't be too funny like them.
What a way to put it. Okay.
Another thing you need to do is always be always
Skeptical.
be
Skeptical?
skeptical.
Right.
Tama, ayun. Always be skeptical about sensationalized headlines. A lot of the times, like, especially in like, the modern times, a lot of the articles you see online are extremely sensationalized in order to grab more clicks. So ayun yun yung tawag doon, yung clickbait, 'di ba?
Yes.
So
Mm.
they often have misleading titles that might not be true to the actual event that occurred. Like, for example, if they were gonna release a movie with, let's say, starring
Matt
what's
Damon.
a famous actor? I'm having a hard time thinking of one. Ayun
Matt
nga,
Damon.
let's say Matt Damon stars in like a horror film. I don't know if he did horror films. But let's just pretend that he didn't do one. So some sensationalized headlines would be like, famous actor joins movie. Diba? They're gonna be like that.
Yes.
That's a bit exaggerated, pero a lot of headlines are like that. You need to make sure that the sources you get from don't, don't do that, or at least you should be able to fact check your sources.
Basically, our
Then,
audience, you should
speaking of fact
remember
checking,
that.
Correct.
Okay, I'm gonna go.
some people are
Basically,
scumbags and they
to the
just
people
want to use
watching
you for
this.
money.
Wait. We'll cut that part out. James, you see this? We cut that part out. Ross, you continue.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, for our audience, I want you to remember two things that are very important but are often looked past at, especially presented with juicy information found online. Number one is it doesn't mean that it's on the internet that it's true. Secondly, doesn't mean that
Oh yeah, true.
a lot of the people you know, whether
Or
it's
false.
online or in person, believe in it. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that again. Hindi porket maraming naniniwala ay true na siya. That's yun na gusto ko sabihin. Remember that, guys. Remember that.
Yun nga. Speaking of, naalala niyo dati, like, naalala ko, there was a time where people kept dumping car batteries into the ocean kasi people said that it was good for fish.
I do not remember that, but that is really sad.
It was a thing.
I do not know that.
There was a fake news
What
that
the
spread around Facebook and stuff that you should take your car batteries and throw them into the ocean to help the fish. Obviously, you shouldn't do that.
Probably
Anyone
not.
with a working brain should know that you shouldn't throw car batteries into the ocean because it's not very helpful for fish. It's not very helpful for fish.
Not
In
very.
fact, it kills them. Killing fish isn't very helpful.
I see.
Remember that, guys. Don't be stupid.
Okay, pero going to the last point. Yun nga, don't be stupid. That's the main thing in BraInsight. When you watch BraInsight, you get smarter.
Okay.
And we want to help you get less dumb, all right?
That's
So
definitely
going on to the
true.
last point. Yeah, the last method to spot fake news that I listed here on my index card is to always be mindful of your own personal biases. So if you
Isa pa yan,
see
isa
a
pa
news
yan.
headline or a piece of news or a piece of information that you see online, especially if it conforms to your beliefs, do not trust it until you get the full picture. That's something that a lot of
Yes.
people like to do.
And
So
don't be so
whenever you
narrow
find,
vision.
ayun, tama. So
Don't be myopic.
myopic, ayan, another word for the day.
Another word for the day.
I don't understand what that means, but it's probably really cool. Okay, but ayun, especially if the information that you see online aligns very well to the things you believe in.
Yeah.
you need to be skeptical, because that's the only way you'll be able to understand if you uh, get your facts straight, is to always check your sources, fact check, be skeptical of stuff online, especially from sources that you're unfamiliar with. And I think we've gone pretty long already.
Yeah, it is probably gonna
We're
be a
18
40
minutes
minute
and
video.
probably not 40 minutes if I end it right now. So,
Nice one.
to everyone watching, this is the final episode of BraInsight. We hope you enjoyed the video. We thank you so much for joining us on this journey, making like videos for yung Tura. It was very fun. I think it was a very it was a very fun activity. And uh, always remember, don't be stupid, be smart, check your facts,
Yes.
And watch
and
BrainSight.
BraInsight loves you. Bye bye.
How do you stop this?
Yeah, just watch the other stuff also, but mostly BraInsight. BraInsight.
Okay, wait,
Cool.
wait, stop it. Okay.
Brainium and the cranium, preventing pandemonium, premium show of the millennium, cerebrum exploratorium. We guarantee that this podcast is better than alright. And now we welcome you to
BrainSight.